Good. Do you think, even as an atheist, the Ten Commandments, the right side of the Ten Commandments is a good place to
The
start?
right side.
Well, because the left side, I think you'd have a big problem, right?
Many of you may have seen the latest episode of Bill Maher's Club Random featuring conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Now, Maher's been under fire of late from fellow liberals for his recent visit to the White House for dinner with President Trump, and Maher happens to be the latest leftist podcaster to sit down with Kirk. It was a very rich, insightful, and far-ranging discussion, but when things turned to religion, that is where both men appeared to miss something fundamental. And for me, we can really see this most explicitly in their discussion on the Ten Commandments.
Good. Do you think, even as an atheist, the Ten Commandments, the right side of the Ten Commandments is a good place to
The
start?
right side.
Well, because the left side, I think you'd have a big problem, right?
I have a problem with 8 of the 10 because only 2 of them are laws.
You got a problem with 8 of the 10.
2 of them are laws. Only 2.
What do you mean?
Don't kill
And don't steal. Okay,
and don't steal.
sure.
Like, I mean, this idea that God is
But
this.
you're good with those two.
Like
obvious.
the first 4 are just jealous God shit. It's just like, you know what?
No,
God,
honoring your parents
like-
is not jealous
like,
God stuff.
God's like a pimp who was in the next room and he said, "Who you on the phone with there, girl?" You know, I mean,
But I mean,
I guess I'm testing
well,
that.
hold on. But no, it's again, I'm not
All right.
offendable on this, but I think you could. I know you made fun of it in Religulous, but there's something beautiful about not working for a day.
Oh,
You know what I
oh,
mean, like
day.
honoring the Sabbath.
Oh, a week is even better.
But
the
like,
well, the Sabbath. No, I mean the Sabbath
but
is
slowing down and saying that we're not
I know,
going
but,
to toil for a
I
day.
don't- but do you need? Why would you need a religion to get to that? Why would you need a religion to? Hey, let's not kill each other and take a day off. Like again, I don't need a threat or a carrot for that. It's just so intrinsic. It sort of reminds me of the beginning of the Declaration of
but
Independence.
If it's in,
All right, let's unpack that a bit, that exchange, because I think there's so much there that both men missed. First and foremost, the biggest thing that both of them missed, and what Charlie really needed to impress, what he needed to confront Bill Maher on, is that Bill Maher is religious. I know that will come as news to him. I know, but Bill Maher isn't just religious. Bill Maher is inescapably religious. And one of the reasons why this gets missed is because you'll notice that whenever Bill Maher talks about religion, which appears to be a lot, he never, at least I have never heard him at any point stop to actually define religion. He never stops to clarify what precisely he's talking about. But we got some clues there. Did you catch it? Maher operates with the assumption that religion is something in society that we don't need. I mean, and you heard him say it, right? Why do I need religion for that? I don't need a carrot. I don't need warnings. It's just common sense. We don't need a religion for this or that, right? So for Maher, and this is key, for Maher, religion is something in society. Religion is something found in social order. So you've got society and you've got religion. And Maher's consistent thesis is that religion is not necessary for a healthy, flourishing society. Unfortunately for Maher, he appears to be completely ignorant of over 100 years of cultural anthropological research that has come to the very opposite conclusion. Cultural anthropologists have argued in over a century of research that the way human society is ultimately bound together is through something we call the sacred. And the sacred is comprised of timeless myths and narratives that are considered absolute and unquestionable, and thereby provide the means by which we can have social order. In other words, they are beyond argument, and therefore there is now a basis, a connective tissue to bind us together. And so for cultural anthropologists, religion is social order. Religion, or the sacred, as they will call it more specifically, is social order. So it's not a matter of having social order over here and religion over there that somehow maybe helps out with society. No, religion is social order. That's what the term religion actually means. Religio is derived from the Latin religare, which means to retie or rebind one's social obligations. So right off the bat, we can see that Bill Maher is terribly confused as to what religion actually is. He's simply, in the end, from what I can gather, he simply redefines religion as a personal, private belief that cannot be substantiated by science and evidence. And then he spends his entire career bashing anyone who would believe that. But he only ends up bashing people for believing a concept that he and other atheistic agnostics invented. His conception of religion has nothing to do with the critical academic study of what religion actually is. For reference here, one of my favorite books on this is by French anthropologist and sociologist Bruno Latour, entitled "We Have Never Been Modern." And his thesis, it's brilliant, and his thesis is that while liberal modernity claimed that it had separated science from religion, scientific fact from religious myth, that claim itself, ironically, is nothing more than a liberal modernist myth. That's what it is. That's how it functions. Liberal modernists may claim that they've left behind religion, but that claim is nothing more than a confession of faith in liberal modernity. Latour shows that Bill Maher is just as religious as any pharaoh in ancient Egypt, any cathedral builder in medieval Europe. The very fact that he has convinced himself otherwise is itself simply testimony to just how powerful this modernist myth is in his life. So that's my first beef with this discussion. To the extent that Bill Maher participates in a social order, he himself participates in religion, since religion is social order. So that's the first thing that needed to be pointed out to him. But it's what Bill Maher said expressly about the Ten Commandments themselves that really shows just how ignorant he is. This is going to blow you away. Are you finding that allergies are turning your nights into a nightmare? Well, meet Sambrosa Sweet Dreams Night Syrup. Gang, this is your ticket to a sleep paradise. This isn't just any syrup. It's a unique blend of pure natural honey, soothing organic herbs, and a touch of doxylamine, a trusted antihistamine that tackles those pesky nighttime symptoms. Whether it's sneezing, congestion, or itchy eyes keeping you up, Sambrosa's got you covered. Take it before bed and let its gentle formula help you drift off and stay asleep. This stuff is absolutely amazing. Wake up feeling refreshed, not groggy, and you know the best part? It starts at just $11.99. No prescriptions, no hassle, just natural relief. Visit the link below and use code Turley for 25% off and finally enjoy the sleep you deserve. Click on that link below right now. Now, Charlie Kirk initiated the conversation on the Ten Commandments by asking Maher if he thought the right side of the commandments is a good place to start for moral obligations in society, the part of the commandments that entail, the general moral prescripts, as opposed to the more theological, the left side, thou shalt have no other gods before me, thou shalt not make any graven image, and the like. And again, while I appreciate what Charlie is doing there, kind of getting into a natural law approach to things, nevertheless, that kind of abstraction, that sort of separating the two tablets, as it were, I think just further underscores the confusion that Bill Maher has in all of this. Bottom line, there is no morality without the sacred. Bottom line. There are no moral prescripts without a sacred source that sanctifies those prescripts as obligatory. As it turns out, ironically, Bill Maher's sacred liberalism is just as jealous as the God he's dismissing. There is no moral prescription without a sacred source that authorizes that prescription. To say it's all a matter of common sense is simply to sanctify common sense. Common sense, in that case, now becomes a sacred cow. Now, again, this has been the object of study for decades now, and we know precisely how this works. It's actually fascinating. What the sacred does, whatever it is, whether it's Christianity or Bill Maher's modern liberalism, whatever the sacred is, what it does is it effectively reconfigures the world around itself. And it does it through a very unique conception known as sacred truth, or what's also known as a word-to-word conception of truth. So, for example, when we consider something to be true, if I say something that we all acknowledge as true, we generally operate with the assumption that whatever I said corresponds to how things actually are. So if I say it's hot outside, you can determine whether that's true or not by simply opening a window, right? So that conception of truth involves what's called a word-to-world correspondence. My word corresponds to the world around us as it really is. So hence we know that what I said is true. But what we have to understand here is that this is not the conception of truth that civilizations are built on. All social orders, all civilizations are built on a very different conception of truth, what's often called a world-to-word correspondence, meaning that the world can actually conform to our words, provided we have the authority to do so. Our words can actually create reality. So in this case, my words don't simply correspond to a previously existing reality. My words can now actually create a reality that did not exist before my utterance. For example, when a pastor declares, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," if you think it through, those words actually created a new reality. Those words didn't correspond to a previously existing reality. They created that reality. The betrothed were not husband and wife before the clergyman declared them to be so. The declaration created the reality. That's why he could turn them around, face the congregation, and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, I now present to you Mr. and Mrs." And we see this everywhere. This is how societies are built. We see it in the handing of the diploma at a graduation ceremony. That creates the reality that you're a graduate. We see it in the bestowal of rank on a general in the military. We see it when you get a new job. You're hired. Those words created or the opposite, right? Trump's favorite line, "You're fired." Those words are word-to-word utterances. The world corresponds to the words. And what's so interesting here is that you'll notice in the case of the wedding, the pastor won't just say, "I pronounce you husband and wife." The pastor will say, "With the authority invested in me, I now pronounce you." And that's the key, because that's precisely where the sacred comes in. This is where the left side of the Ten Commandments come in. The sacred legitimates. It sanctifies the authority of the ones who utter those statements through what's called status functions. So in other words, the sacred bestows status on people. Again, take the military, for example. What makes a general distinct from, say, a lieutenant is the general has been conferred with a certain socially recognized status. It's performative. He's made a general. Just as a betrothed couple is made, they're transformed into husband and wife through the status-creating utterances of those who have been ordained with authority to bestow that status. And the key here is that all of this status function ends up creating a social order, an entire social order that transcends our own personal dispositions and inclinations. If all we were left with is just our own personal subjective inclinations, we would inevitably result in unending conflict. Status function locks into human rationality in such a way that gives you reasons for acting that are completely independent of your own subjective inclinations. So if you recognize an obligation as a binding obligation, like if I said, I promise you that I'll do X, Y, and Z, I now recognize that I have a desire-independent reason for acting on that obligation. Once I've made the promise, it doesn't matter how I feel about it. I have an obligation now to fulfill that promise. That's the status function of the word-to-word correspondence. And without that ability to create realities, there can be no social cohesion, cooperation, or civilization, since there would be no social order that transcends our own conflicting personal inclinations and dispositions. So all of this is to say that it is never a matter of whether you're going to have a religion. It's always a matter of which one. In other words, what kind of society, what kind of social order, what kind of civilization do you want to live in? Religion is not something in society. Religion is society. And it's interesting, you know, Bill Maher at the end of that clip, he referenced the Declaration of Independence. But unfortunately for Maher, his religious sentiments are largely foreign to our founding fathers. Our founding fathers all argued that the American experiment of ordered liberty can only work if we are a virtuous people. Civic virtue is what guaranteed self-government. But our founding fathers also believed that we can only be virtuous if that virtue is rooted in a classical religious tradition. Our founding fathers did not disparage religion the way Bill Maher does. Instead, they recognized religion as indispensable for precisely the kind of social order of ordered liberty that they envisioned. Bill Maher's atheistic agnosticism is not the religion that founded this nation. And so it's no surprise that when his very atheistic agnosticism starts taking over our public institutions, our nation begins to unravel. Our culture gets really effed up because it's literally bringing in foreign gods. So there you go. With this new civilizational world rising all around us and the massive religious renewal that's corresponding to it, it's time we left behind this silly, ridiculous binary of reason versus religion, science versus Christianity, nonsense, and the ignorant opinions that accompany that ridiculous binary. Civilization is religious. Religion provides the connective tissue that functions as the cult of culture, binding society together through awakening obligations that transcend our own subjective inclinations. Perhaps one day Bill Maher will come to realize that, which will make for even more amazing future conversations with the likes of Charlie Kirk.
We will stand bravely, dream boldly, and nothing will stand in our way because we are Americans. The future is ours, and our golden age has just begun.
As we speak, America is regaining its rightful place as the greatest, most powerful, and prosperous nation on the planet. We have so much to celebrate already. Safer borders, the dismantling of DEI, permission to drill, baby, drill, and over $1 trillion in new investments released into the economy. We stand on the precipice of what will be known as the most prosperous time in American history. The only question is, will you be an active participant in the golden age, or will you sit passively on the sidelines watching everyone else build wealth? Well, if you want to be part of the former, then I urge you to join me and my good friend Mark Wilburn at the Golden Age Summit on Thursday, April 24th at 4 p.m. Eastern. Mark is a stock market genius whose recent recommendations have led to returns of over 200%. He's an amazing teacher, and he's got a knack for demystifying the market so everyday Americans can participate in this golden age we're now in. But don't wait. Seating registration is limited, so click on that link below right now and register today for this free online event, and I'll see you for a moment that promises to change your life.